We all have a story to tell. Let's tell yours. Welcome to the Intellectual People Podcast with your host, Jason. Come together and listen to journey stories and more from interesting people. Welcome your host, Jason.
Welcome to the Intellectual People Podcast. I often post on forums, and I'd like to personally thank those forum owners for allowing me to post on those forums. In no particular order, they are audiosciencereview.com, audiocircle.com, audioshark.org, audiofilestyle.com, AV Nirvana, which is also the home of Rumi Q Wizard and AudioLens, DIYaudio.com, gears.com, and Parts Express Forum. Thank you so much and enjoy. Today on the Intellectual People Podcast, I have Tania from Shareablee.com. How are you doing today, Tania?
Doing well on this wonderful day. What's been happening with you, Jason?
About the same, thank you. What is Shareablee?
Shareablee, at its simplest essence, is a portal into culture, like how people are feeling, how they're thinking. It's primarily used to help brands understand, how consumers feel about them, but oftentimes it's really used as a window to understand the fast-changing consumer, which, in the last 12 months that we've had has been particularly important.
I want to talk about how you actually got there, because you certainly, as a little girl, probably did not think that you would be involved in something such as that. Is that true?
I didn't necessarily dream of owning a data analytics company. That is true. It wasn't even necessarily in the ballpark of any potential occupations that I thought about. So I'd actually started my career mostly in the content business. So I'd done a lot of content development and acquisitions. That had somehow morphed into a role measuring content with a company that was in the internet measurement business called ComScore. And while I was there, I saw a lot of opportunity with, at the time, a new thing called Facebook. And that really prompted me to go and build a solution that was designed to measure this sort of new media in a way that I felt like a lot of traditional companies really couldn't.
Are you a programmer then?
A little bit of everything. So I built the first data collection system. Thankfully, none of that code ever touched anything that was syndicated for Shareablee, so don't worry. No, I mean, at heart, I'm probably most close to being a data analyst and in particular a storyteller. I never really knew that I loved data until I learned what you could do with the information that you could uncover. And then the actual extraction and analysis thing was just a means to an end. But yeah, a lot of my training was around content development, originally. So all of this sort of fit into that theme in a pretty weird and unexpected way.
How did Shareablee actually come about? What was the defining moment?
So I had taken a role just after I wrapped my product role at ComScore, and but I knew I wanted to start something, and I was doing the nights and weekends thing, which by the way just doesn't work, right? If you're the kind of person that can throw yourself into everything, you just sort of can't really moonlight. So I took a couple days vacation from my job just to work exclusively on this new company that didn't even have a name at that point. And after about 3 days full time of just focusing on it, thinking about it, dreaming it up and sort of bringing it into being, I went back to my job. And then it just became abundantly clear to me that I didn't belong there and that I shouldn't be there and that I needed to quit immediately. So I did.
Really? So I
did. Yeah, it was terrifying, but I did.
So you quit without really a true plan?
Oh, yeah, I quit with no plan. Yeah, no. My plan was to devote myself full time to this new idea. I knew enough to know that there was something real in it. The first iteration of Shareablee was actually more focused on the small to mid-sized business space.
Okay.
I'm still a huge believer in. We went enterprise because that appeared to be sort of the biggest problem that needed to be solved when we launched. But it was just clear to me that it was a space I needed to be in, and that if I wasn't dedicated to it full time, I would never really figure out what I meant by that, So
What made you believe that there was room for you? What was it, the legal side, or was it the data side, or where was the connect of realizing that companies needed more data? When when
uh,
when the consumer probably believes they already have too much data, right?
I never really thought about it that way, I don't think. I think so. I built a very simple collection mechanism to start pulling in some of the data that the system was ultimately built on. And, I created a couple of PowerPoint slides and showed it to friends of mine who were marketers. And it was really just gauging their reactions. Like, was this insight useful? Did they already have it? Originally, the reason I wanted to target the business to small and medium-sized companies was I thought that the enterprises would have had it all figured out. But I learned very quickly that, that wasn't the case, and they were doing some really cool stuff in the space, but they maybe didn't quite have the insight or the measurement to support it. So that was sort of what made me shift to enterprise. But I think it was just generally taking it to some of the smartest marketers that I knew and saying, would you use this? Could this help you? And getting that positive reaction sort of gave me the confidence that I needed to go all in and keep building.
Are you willing to share your first large company that decided Shareablee gives us exactly what we need?
Yeah, the first company was actually a really unexpected one, and the second one was a really unexpected one too. So the first was The Economist magazine,
Okay.
who wouldn't be who you would maybe think of, at least at that time, as sort of a big social brand, right? All the narrative was around consumer packaged goods and Red Bull and all of that. But they actually, had an incredibly talented team who had built the early stages of a very thriving social practice, and they had done it, largely on instinct and on just staying very close to their users. And actually, the second client was WD-40, right.
Very
And
interesting.
again, that sort of came about. I think I was at a conference and I struck up a conversation with one of their marketing team, and I was just talking about what I was doing. I was like, obviously this wouldn't matter to them, so I'm just going to talk, and it turned out they actually were very interested and, signed up as clients shortly thereafter.
And if you don't mind, can you tell us what metrics they're actually really interested in using? Like what part of Shareablee is it that's really beneficial to those types of companies?
Yeah, it really depends on at what point sort of in the marketing process they're thinking. So if you think about it, there's the first challenge, which is maybe one of the biggest ones, which is like, gosh, the consumer is bombarded with messages, paying half attention to anything at best. How do I even connect? How do I even get their attention? So in that case, the metrics that brand marketers will focus most on, and it's not really metrics, it's more the insights that they'll focus on, is like what's happening in culture, what's happening around specific topics, or what's happening with a specific consumer like Gen Z. So if I know that I have a lipstick brand that I need to market, it's really important for me not to just do that in a vacuum and to focus on my brand. It's much more important for me to meet customers where they are in terms of their concerns and their interests. So that's kind of where it starts. And then once you have worked through a campaign, you've seen some examples of the kinds of creative that consumers love, and that could be on social or it could be anywhere. then you need to look back and go, how is it actually going? Am I hitting my mark? Are consumers, have I increased awareness? Are people feeling differently about my brand? And am I building that ultimate customer experience and loyalty? So at that point, then you're looking at more quantitative metrics around reach and engagement and brand lift. But early on, it's very much about understanding culture and understanding the consumer, and recognizing that, particularly with the year that the world has had, that consumer is really thinking differently about a lot of things, and that you can't just be cookie cutter about how you engage him or her, or how you express the value of your brand.
How is Shareablee judged by the the businesses? What do they look at Shareablee and go, "Are we getting what we're paying for?" What do they use?
The ultimate success metric is always, we're very commingled with the success of the marketing program. So, is Shareablee helping me with what I need to know in order to go out and make decisions with confidence? So is the data coming to me in a timely way? Is it easy for me to understand what I need to do? Can I take action based on it? Ultimately, they're evaluating the success of campaigns and decisions that they've made based on our data. But I'd say the threshold is it easy for me to understand the action that I must take, or what I must do differently using these insights? Because even if we had the best data in the world, if it requires an advanced degree and a 47-hour onboarding process, like, no one has the time for that. So that's always the initial threshold. And it's like, even just in the last couple of months, we've found that as a company, our focus has been on rolling out very sort of configurable, easy to use dashboards, because everyone's working from home and they're not sitting in a big conference room together, putting together these big complicated views, right? So everyone needs tools to make their jobs easier. And that's a really, we need to be held to a high standard to enable that for our customers.
Is Shareablee a web-based application?
Yes. Yeah, so you log in and you can get your access and you can run searches or just view dashboards.
Very configurable and very intuitive.
So our solution really meets both of those use cases. You have a suite of customizable dashboards. We like to think of it as like a marketplace of insights where you can just drag and drop things as you like. And we also do have an Explorer suite of tools, which, as the name suggests, are really for those who have a specific idea in mind and really want to go deep and run a lot of queries and deal with things a little more head on.
Would you say that there's a threshold for the size company that Shareablee is really targeted to?
I would and I wouldn't. So I'd say from a pricing standpoint, yes, right. We're definitely, we're priced for enterprise users. But for example, our Insight Studio product is targeted for individual users or consultancies or others. So we hope that that's a much more accessible entry point into our solutions. I think if you're not investing in social to drive your business or to grow your business, and that in and of itself might suggest a company of a certain size, but certainly, there are some small companies that are running direct to consumer that we would love to talk to, because we believe that the intelligence we have could be very beneficial as they grow their businesses. But, maybe other businesses that are their size that aren't selling socially or aren't digital first in that way, if they don't really have an Instagram presence or a Facebook presence, they probably wouldn't get the same benefit.
Do you think that there's a certain market of business that you excel at? Or is it really just connecting, whether it's social or digital marketing?
We excel at partnering with companies that want to innovate and disrupt. We struggle with companies that are not committed to really, really committing to digital and to new channels. So I think it's less about the industry and it's more about the culture.
Okay.
But if there are marketers that really want to lean in, that really want to win in the crowded digital environment, we are an excellent partner. But I will also say, in certain cases where we've partnered with companies that maybe knew they needed to be on social, but didn't really know why and didn't really want to be there, there's just less that we can do then to really drive change and to really drive growth.
When you partner with a new company, you called it onboarding. Is it an involved process of sitting down and having a roadmap of how you both are going to partner and work together?
Yeah, it's really, the first and foremost, it's about making sure that we understand our clients' goals and what they're trying to achieve. So that means that we can, steer them towards the right pieces of our solution, and that we can also be sort of thinking along those lines. So that piece of it is involved because every business has a different reason for, for investing in digital or what they're hoping to achieve. But I think the more we can spend time upfront understanding what success looks like, the more we're able to really focus our time on helping our client, get that outcome that they're really hoping for. Because there's just, some partners will be very focused on just understanding the consumer, right? And they might not even be ready to run campaigns against that, anytime in the near future. It's really a consumer insights use case. That's okay, right? But that's very different than a client who, has a huge launch coming up in a month or 6 weeks and really needs to know critical business intelligence right now. It'll sort of help us decide how we really run that partnership.
How do you deal with the legal side of data collection?
In what sense?
In terms of the data that you potentially are collecting?
I mean, we work with every single social network. There are terms of service with each of those social networks. It's very simple. Like, you just follow the law and you don't break it. I mean, look, I say that as if it's simple, but I mean, there's a lot of companies in our space that do not do that. And, I'd say for any of your listeners, it is really important to ask the questions specifically around privacy. Maybe just understanding that there are certain things. I'll give you a concrete example.
Please.
So Instagram video views is a private metric right now. And that means that anyone who says they have publicly available Instagram video view metrics is scraping it illegally, and they are in breach of the terms of services of this platform. So, so as a company who's going to use this data, you need to know, just like you need to know the ingredients of the food you put in your mouth, you really need to know the ingredients of the data that you use to drive decision making for 2 reasons. One, you don't want it to have been collected in a way that is illicit. But secondly, most of those illicit collection mechanisms are also very unreliable, right? So if you're trying to scrape certain solutions, they will make it very hard for those companies because they'll be shutting them down and trying to stop them, which means data will just go dark for days and then it will come back on and it will go off. So, I think the more that clients become sort of educated and demand that higher standard, the better it is for everyone, because then no one is incentivized to break the rules, to get someone what they want. So it's, that's very important to us. We've always been very proactive with the platforms themselves, and we've always taken privacy very seriously. But, when you see things like a Cambridge Analytica and others, that was just an industry that wasn't paying attention to what was going on. And everyone suffered for it.
How many employees make up Shareablee?
We have 55 employees.
55. And is it mainly in the programming space?
Yeah, it's a large chunk of our team is product engineering, analytics, and data science. And then we're sort of also across our business teams that handle like client insights and analytics, as well as working directly with our partners.
How much data do you actually collect in terms of terabytes, if you will?
Gosh, let me see. I actually have this stat for you. Hang on one second. I'll pull that up in the background, but it's a lot. I think the technical term is a lot. It's something like 300 million API calls per day, and I think it's like 200 plus terabytes per month. So it's a lot of data.
Wow. How many clients does Shareablee currently have then?
We have just over 200 clients.
Fantastic. And how long?
Have we been in business?
Yes,
Yeah, founded 2013.
13. Any legal department?
We have in-house counsel, but not
You
a
do.
department. Yeah.
Where did the Shareablee name come from?
I probably need a better sort of origin tale for the name, but I want to say we were playing around with this idea of like why people share content, like particularly when we started out, the act of sharing was sort of the really premium action, which was like, hey, I'm going to take this piece of content that you have created, and I'm going to push it out to everyone I've ever known and loved. So it was just viewed as this very premium experience. So I think it was around what makes content shareable, and just playing with that concept.
Where does Shareablee go from here?
A big focus for us at the moment. So I talked up front about Shareablee being this window to helping marketers and businesses understand culture. So we're really clicking into that idea. So what you'll see from us in the coming months and years are additional data sets. We've already experimented with integrations around set-top box data or loyalty card data or other sort of things to do with purchase information. So you'll see a lot more from us focusing on getting more and more 360 around the consumer. And I'd say beyond that, our mission is to make data accessible for the non-heavy data user, right? So like when we first went to market, it was like, if you were a data lover, we were the right partner for you. And it didn't matter if we didn't know how to sell, it didn't matter if we had no marketing, like you would find us because you were going to seek out the absolute premium source of information. And I feel like that user will always be my core user, right? Because it's the man and woman after my own heart. But equally, we want to really democratize the information and insights process, and that means creating faster, easier, more actionable ways for the casual user who just has a question, who doesn't want to be an analyst, who doesn't want to be a researcher, who never wants to know anything about how the sausage is made, can really get to that answer very quickly. So you'll see much more from us empowering that user to be able to make decisions with confidence. Because I think for too long, data and intelligence and insights has sort of resided within this small Illuminati in every company who sort of are in the back cave, and when you have a question, you've got to go to them and slip your piece of paper under the door and maybe something comes out, and I think it's really time to bust that wide open and make this something that everyone can benefit from, and that it speaks a language that humans speak as opposed to a language that data scientists speak.
And is that something that your team is currently working on?
It is, yeah. It's a really top priority. It's the rate of organizational change, of digital acceleration, like all of these things are hitting everyone in a company. And, the faster that we can put actionable data in the hands of those who need it in the moment, the more useful it's going to be. So that's a very, very big focus for us.
Will artificial intelligence affect you guys at all?
I think it already does. I think it already plays into how we think about predictive intelligence. It already feeds into how we think about synthesizing insights and takeaways from huge amounts of unstructured data. It doesn't impact us maybe to the same way it would a publisher, where they're thinking of creating content and things like that. But certainly, certainly it feeds into how we think about analyzing and drawing predictive intelligence from all of the data that we have.
Everybody likes a success story. Is it possible to give me a success story of a client, which can go unnamed, and just tell us kind of how it progressed to the success?
Yeah, I think a really good one springs to mind. So we were working with a big luxury beauty brand, and we'd started with one brand and literally one person at that brand who was sort of the person who had the glint in their eye that saw that they could do something. And they began by just taking our metrics and measurement and lining it up with their internal purchase data to see if there was a there there. And very quickly, they started to see that it was actually lining up in a way. Like there was, I think, one particular product where sales had really dropped and they didn't know why. And using our competitive information, they saw that a big competitor had just shot up overnight and gained huge share, particularly on Instagram. So that really spread. This person, became elevated, but also designed a framework for many of the other brands, not just here in the US, but also globally, to just look at things on a monthly basis, right? So they're not going to be crazy. They're not doing it in real time just yet, just every month, right? One time. And really over the years, they've scaled that. They're using a lot of our intelligence, not only to look back, but also to look forward, which is what gets me really excited, right? Because once it's already done, it's done. And you always hate to be the data and analytics provider who shows up and goes, well, better luck next time, right? That wasn't good, So it's been wonderful to see that evolution, but going from, just this one person who had a vision of how they could potentially use us, and then seeing the growth, her growth over the years in the organization as she sort of became the visionary around how to sort of really bring insights to the forefront, and now just seeing that scaled out at such a global way.
Fantastic story. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
Gosh, no, you asked really great questions. Maybe you could ask me which platform I'm the most excited about right now, looking at the data, and I would say to you, gosh, that's a terribly hard question, Jason. I'm horrified that you asked me. But we have been looking a lot. Like we recently rolled out like a marketing measurement partnership with TikTok. So we've been looking at a lot of the TikTok data, which is just fascinating. It's very different. It probably, Instagram stories has some analog in what we're seeing, but that's really exciting. And then, of course, we're just rolling out, we haven't actually pushed this out to the market yet, but we will soon, holistic measurement of Twitch. And that's just a whole other world of esports and what that means in culture and how that's just changing, so much about how people spend their time. So, and look, last year was an exceptional year. Like Facebook saw huge growth last year, particularly around sort of influencers and others. So it's just been a time where we've, seen so many people come back to their mobile phones to really not only be entertained, but also to connect.
Tania, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And if anybody has any interest, Shareablee.com is the place to go.
Hit us up. Lovely to be here. Really great to chat. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Find us on YouTube and Facebook at the Intellectual People Podcast and online at theintellectualpeoplepodcast.com. Check back for exciting new episodes.